So the first thing I'm going to do, you see this white stuff in here? This is the pericardium.
Yeah, that was
It's very fibrous stuff, and that's there to help protect the heart. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is cut off some of this fat so that we can get to the heart itself. So you can see the fat's attached to the pericardium. Fold that back. All right. So you have a front, posterior, and an anterior side. This is the anterior side, the side that if you're looking at me, it's facing you. The reason I know is because of this line going right across here. Right? And this line, this fissure, is separating the right and the left ventricle. This part is the left ventricle. This is the right ventricle. All right, so your heart's got 4 chambers. You got 2 atria and 2 ventricles. Blood comes in from either the lungs or from the rest of your body into the atria. Right atria receives blood from what we call the systemic system, which is the majority of your body, and the left atrium is going to receive blood coming from the lungs. Right. Then the atria will contract and push the blood into the ventricles. The right ventricle is going to send blood to the lungs to become oxygenated. Right? The left ventricle is receiving oxygenated blood from the lungs. It's going to send it out to the rest of your body, to your systemic system, to make sure that you have plenty of oxygen for all of your cells. Okay. So left ventricle, right ventricle. This is the left atrium. This is the right atrium. Okay, so a flap here. This is the posterior side. See this line going down the middle? Mm-hmm. That's how I know. All right, since it's posterior, it would be sitting like this. So this is the left ventricle. This is the right ventricle because it would be sitting like this, just like it would be on you. What else do you need to know on here? Aortic arch. See this large vessel coming out here? It actually comes up from the left ventricle, comes up and goes around and wraps around toward the back. That is the aortic arch. It is the largest artery in your body. So the blood coming from the left ventricle goes out into that aorta. And then it'll have branches going off. Some will go up into the head, into the shoulders and arms. Then you'll have the descending part that goes down the body, and it's going to send trunks, arteries off into the various parts of your tissues and legs. Okay. I don't know if we can see the brachiocephalic trunk, but we'll see if we can find it on here. Cutting any vessels. All right, get rid of that. All right, posterior side here. All right, so you can sort of see openings here. These are your various vessels. Here. Here. The ones that are kind of a little bit more rounded, these are going to be arteries, and the ones that kind of collapse completely are typically veins. All right, so coming in from here, you've got, this would be the pulmonary vein, and it's going to kind of follow it, kind of goes into here. So the pulmonary veins bring oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. Oh, sorry. Now these are this is the pulmonary trunk right here. So blood's going to go to the left and to the right lungs. Right? This one will go to the right, this will go to the left. What else do you need to know? So let's cut this open.
Sharp.
It's new. Guys are late. You really shouldn't be allowed in after 10 minutes. All right. All right. So what we have here is the atrium, and here's another atrium.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to send blood into the ventricles. So these are the cavity of the ventricles. And you can tell the right from the left ventricle because of how thick the outer wall is. See how thin this is compared to this one?
Mm-hmm.
I know this is the left ventricle because the left ventricle has to be strong enough to get that blood out of the heart all the way down to your toes and back up to the heart. So it's stronger. Whereas your right ventricle is just sending the blood a couple centimeters over to the lungs.
Yeah.
All right? So if you were to see these and said which one's the right, which one's the left, you would be able to know because of look at the outer wall. This part's called the septum. It's called the interventricular septum. It just separates the two ventricles. Notice these strings in here? All right. So in your heart, you have 4 valves. 2 on the right side, 2 on the left side. You have a valve between the atrium and the ventricle. Right? So this flap in here, these flaps are what we call the atrioventricular valves or AV valves. So blood will flow from the atrium down into the ventricle. And then when the ventricle starts to contract, it starts pushing blood from the bottom. It starts contracting at the bottom. And it starts pushing the blood upwards. The blood's going to hit these flaps, cause them to close. That's your first heart sound. If you've ever listened to your heart, it goes, lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. That first sound you hear are these atrioventricular valves snapping closed. And what it's doing is preventing blood from going back up into the atrium. Okay. These little strings are called chordae tendineae. And they actually are attached to muscles down here, these little lumpy things. Those are called papillary muscles. So those papillaries and muscles will start to contract as the ventricles contract, so that when those valves close, it's pulling down on the strings, holding those valves closed. Because these are really strong contractions, and you don't want those valves to go backwards up into the atrium and let the blood go out. Okay. There's also some semilunar valves. So the blood from the left ventricle is going to go up through here, up into the aorta. And can't really see the semilunar valves. Look at this one. Well, there's one of them. Right there, I think, and there's the other. These semilunar valves are between the ventricle. If it's the left ventricle, it's going to be between the ventricle and the aorta. If it's between the right, it's in the right, it's going to be between the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. So these are typically closed when the heart's filling with blood. And then when the ventricle starts contracting, blood, as it pushes up, causes the AV valves to close, but the pressure causes those semilunar valves to open up to allow blood to go out into those arteries, pulmonary trunk, It's an artery. Remember, arteries always carry blood away from the heart, right? And veins pull to the heart. So blood's going to go through those valves, semilunar valves, and go into their respective aortas, or respective arteries. Well, when that happens, then the ventricle starts to relax and the pressure in there drops. Blood starts to flow backwards. And what it does, it hits those semilunar valves, it causes them to snap closed. That's your second heart cell. The dub part, the lub-dub. First snap is the AV valves closing. The second one is the semilunar valves closing, preventing blood from going back down into the ventricles. Because you get a one-way flow of blood. You don't want it ever going backwards, because that's when it's going to really throw things off, and your heart will go into fibrillation.
A heart attack? Is that a heart attack?
It can cause a heart attack. It can cause death. It doesn't get straightened out. All right. So I think that's all you needed to know for the heart. And then we have this model, and it's easier to see things on this. So here.